Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Wigan Fan TV. This evening, we'll be looking ahead to the Wakefield game on Thursday, and we'll be gloating and admiring that performance on Friday night. I know from listening to Super League Pod that Mark had to restrain himself from going over and above commenting on the game on Friday night. Joined tonight by Gareth, who's the resident Basil Fawlty down in the southwest, the journalist and hotelier down in the southwest, and obviously Mark from Super League Pod. Good evening, gents. We start tonight, I guess, by just acknowledging and sort of paying our respects and the sad news this week that we had of Dan Sargenson's brother passing away at the age of 23. I feel like it's important that we acknowledge that and say that we pass all of our condolences on to Dan and Dan's family, and know that every single Wigan fan's behind you, Dan. And if you do play on Thursday, it's an incredible achievement, and everyone will be supporting you 100%. Tonight, Stuart is going to be joining us hopefully at some point. Stu is the number one fan of Wigan Fan TV. If there was a fan TV for Wigan Fan TV, we're just waiting for him to log in at this moment in time. But I'm going to start with you, Gareth. It's the first time that we've spoken in quite a while. I know that Mark's determined to we're going to give Mark as much time as he wants to really guide us through Friday night's performance. But give me your reaction to Friday night. It was special, wasn't it, Gareth?
I would say it's probably the best Wigan performance in a regulation league game for a number of years, and to beat the old enemy from up the road just makes it even more special. I just thought Wigan looked really, really good. People say sort of St Helens, well, they're going to finish top, and did it mean as much to them? Oh, that's nonsense, that is. You always want to beat your rivals, and I think Friday was no different. I just think Wigan, the all-round team performance was really, really good. From 1 to 17 was much better than St Helens. And I watched it a couple of times this afternoon just on catch up. Oliver Gildart leaving Ben Barber on his backside that's one of the images of the season. That's just brilliant. But before that, the way that we broke from the middle of the field and just cut them to shreds, especially in the first half, was really good to see and really good going forward, because I think Wigan and St Helens are probably the two favourites to play in the grand final. And if you play the grand final this weekend, I think Wigan would win, because I think we've got the momentum with us. I think St Helens are struggling. I don't think Barber's the influence that he perhaps was earlier on in the season. The young boy Richardson doesn't seem, they still have some potent players out wide. Makinson obviously took his try well, but I think it's good that we've clicked into gear just at the right time, and perhaps perhaps they're saving their best for the playoffs. They've put the cue in the rack maybe a little bit early, but for us to be coming into some kind of form now is really encouraging going forward, I think. Yeah,
I mean, Mark, I've alluded to the fact that I listened to SLP this morning, and like I say, you were obviously at the game. I guess a bit like Gareth, you've watched it back a few times as well, just to get that feeling, I guess, relive the feeling of Friday night. It felt special. Are we getting too ahead of ourselves, considering that this time last year we had a pretty similar performance, and the 6 weeks that followed were pretty dire from Wigan's point of view, and Saints picked it up. The forum's yours, because I know that you've been waiting to really say everything that you wanted to about Friday night.
Well, I'm getting carried away, mate. We're going to win. We're not going to lose a game all year. That's where I'm at after Friday night. I'm really glad that the coverage, it came through just how loud and constant the Wigan support was through the game, because sometimes it doesn't necessarily travel across as well on TV as it feels like it is when you stood in the away end. It was an absolutely brilliant atmosphere amongst the Wigan fans, and we had a real great time watching it. I just think what I loved was how many players had their best game of the season so far. The review that you sent into SLP touched on it a little bit, I think, but you look through the side, and probably Sargentson had his best game of the season, definitely. And I was gutted for him that he wasn't on the shortlist for man of the match, especially in the first half. He was great in attack and defence. I think Luluai arguably had his best game of the season. Sam Powell definitely had his best game of the season. Navarrete arguably had his best game of the season. Well, as high as the bar's been set for Navarrete when we're talking in terms of Wigan Fan TV.
It's a very high bar.
you know, Greenwood definitely is becoming an 80-minute player now for us, whereas before he was not quite showing that full fitness yet. We saw glimpses, didn't we, against Catalan of him and Williams starting to work, the golden edge getting a new part and looking just as shiny and fantastic as ever. I think Bateman maybe even arguably had his best game of the season, even though how fantastic he's been consistently week in, week out. He's got to be in the conversation now as a Man of Steel candidate. He's been so consistent and so vital to the side. I think Hamlin had his best performance in a Wigan shirt. I think there were just so many great performances. The bit that I loved the most in the whole game really was Sargent's second try. It was fantastic play by the team to get into that position, but most importantly, we'd kind of dealt with quite a bit coming from St Helens. We'd forced them into making stupid decisions, stupid passes, kind of not really breaking down our defence. We were tiring Roby out by forcing him to defence constantly. And then as soon as we got the ball back after a period of defence, we went up the other end and scored. And that was just so great, weren't it? Absolutely buzzing at that stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you've touched on it there, is trying to pick your man of the match. You know, the fact that Sargent wasn't in contention on our league app or whatever it is, you know, and Lou McCarthy, Scarsborough was for his pirouette ballerina style celebration for the no try.
Flying dab, I think it's called.
Is that what it is? Phil Wilkinson asked me to be doing the dab, and I said, let's just call it that. One thing that Dawn says is it a coincidence that Powell and Lulu are having the best games, and I think not. Every single player had at least an 8 out of 10 performance. There wasn't, even when Ollie Parkinson came off the bench, he was solid as he always has been. You know, as much as he possibly could do on there. But I mean,
great conversation for us to have, Sean, the Powell Luluai thing, because if you think about back to the start of last season when we were world champions and things were going pretty swimmingly in the first month of that season, and Luluai and Williams were playing pretty well together, and we've forgotten how well they played together at that stage because Luluai really fell off the pace, I think, as last season went on, and now. It's almost like he can do a month maybe at half and be really, really good in that month, 6 weeks or so. And maybe we've timed it right this year. We're getting that out of him at the business end of the season rather than the start of the season.
No, you spot on with that. I mean, start to the season last year, that Salford game and the World Club Challenge were probably his two best games, and then it sort of went downhill as it did for most of the team. Gareth, we talk about Luluai and Powell. It's been almost a swap, which a few weeks ago I just didn't see working, because Luluai, I think, was having a fantastic season as it was at hooker, but the move that he's done seems to give Powell that little bit of confidence back that he desperately looks like he needed, and bringing Greenwood in there as well over on that left edge. You know, has Sean Wayne had this master plan, do you think, up his sleeve, or has it happened by accident? The fact that we've signed Greenwood because Tompkins left, and then we've tried to move Powell to give him a bit of confidence management, or is it luck?
A little bit of both, I think. A little bit of both. I think it shows the flexibility we had in our squad. I remember we did one of the early season shows with you, and we talked about that Powell and Luluai could be really, really flexible, and that could be the key for Wigan. That you haven't really got a defined 9, you haven't really got a defined 7. You've got two players that can play in either position, and like you said, at the start of last season, Luluai was brilliant, and then just sort of dropped off the edge of the cliff, didn't he, for one reason or the other? And like you say, it'd be pretty ironic if he switches back to playing at 7 and actually ends up Wigan win. It could be one of the reasons why Wigan lift the trophy at Old Trafford. But it's one player you've just missed out when you were talking about. I thought Escaré was brilliant, not because of what he did on the pitch, but because he came in late for Tompkins. Tompkins pulled out just before the game. And you know what? I think looking forward to next season, when obviously Sam's not going to be there, is Escaré making that number 1 shirt his absolute own? Is he going to? Because we also talked, didn't we, Sean, earlier in the season about the fact that Escaré come off the bench and play in either of the halves, or we could even play at hooker. But is Escaré just putting his hand up now, saying, "I am going to be the fullback. I'm going to fill them shoes of Sam"?
I think there's a certain, you know what I mean? Mr. Hardacre would. Well, I think Mr. Hardacre would probably have something to say about that, wouldn't he? I mean, you can imagine the kind of rotation that they've had this season continuing into next year. I think Hardacre is Tompkins' replacement. I think that's been said in one or two places, and I think the fact that we signed Hankinson means that Hardacre isn't viewed as a centre, and that's probably a good thing in reality.
But
We've got to be flexible. There's always going to be injuries and dips in form.
But
absolutely.
Esquer's making it really hard for Adrian Lamb next year, isn't he? I think, because I thought his performance, and like I say, that he didn't pull up any trees. He like you say, he was 8 out of 10 like everyone else. But the way he stepped into such a big game at real short notice, I thought was really, really good going forward, to be honest.
I think as well, he only made 2 probably real glaring errors in the game, and usually Esquer's defensive errors jump
cost
out.
us,
but the only one he made was that kick that he never should have gone for in the first place. And I sort of, as soon as the ball went up, I looked at my uncle and I was like, why is he running towards it? He's never going to catch that. But so I let him off for that, because I don't think he would have.
I think it was a good kick as well.
99 times out of 100, he's dropping it. Yeah, it was in a really dangerous position, coming down at a really fast pace. And then the other one didn't matter because it was when LMS's try was rubbed off. So joy all round for that moment, weren't it?
I've just put on the screen there, missing Ben Barber, the opposite number again for Morgan Esquire. I think, Mark, you touched on it before about the Man of Steel. John Bateman's got to be a contention, and the forms have gone out to journalists this week to vote for the Dream Team, and then I assume the players will be voting for Man of Steel very, very shortly as well. You touched on SLP about James Roby potentially taking that spot. Do you think he's the man for Man of Steel? And Gareth, it'd be interesting to see who you think for Man of Steel at this moment. Consider, Ben Barber is. Yeah. It's not a dip anymore, is it? It's like almost a conscious decision to play badly.
It's really difficult to take away just how above everyone else he was, certainly for the first 3 months of the season, and probably for another month beyond that as well. He was absolutely outstanding, weren't he, Barber? And he was electrifying, and people enjoyed watching him play. He's made a lot of mistakes though. The Gildart try, he didn't know where he was going, did he really? Gildart had him on toast. One of the greatest moments I've had at that stadium certainly was when that try came through in the second half. Those mistakes aren't just individual to this game though. I've started to see that, maybe him not getting to the right place quick enough, maybe him missing a few tackles, and he isn't having that impetus in attack. I don't know if that's all down to Ben Barber. You touched on Richardson as well, maybe not having the same influence just before. I think there's an element of the forwards aren't punching the same sort of holes as consistently. They're not getting that once Thompson goes off, LMS comes on and still keeps that level going. So that's a factor. Having to push him out wide on Friday night, that didn't help them at all, did he? But yeah, it's been 2 months now, and it's been when it's the big games for Barber, whereas Roby's worst ever performance is probably 7 out of 10. And I know Wigan fans like to talk about how he lives in McIlaurin's pocket and things like that. And yes, we have seen in the odd big game another player get over the top of James Roby, but what James Roby does is just absolutely outstanding. There was a moment in the game on Friday night, and I don't think he had his best game. I think Romain Navarrete took a lot out of him. He ran at him about half a dozen times in the first 20 minutes and really tired him out. Right at him, said, "You've got to stop me," sort of thing. And he stopped him because it's James Roby, but it took the energy out of him. But there was in the second half, there was just one moment where he's about 40 metres out from our line, and he managed to pick up the ball and send both our markers the wrong way in the middle of the field. And I don't see anyone else doing that. And Roby does that every week to every defender, no matter how well that defence is playing. To me, is my vote almost every year, to be honest, if I had one.
I'll just address this to Stu. Stu, if you can't get on, if you use Google Chrome, you might have a bit of joy that way, and then we might be able to get you on for a sort of an encore at the end if you use Google Chrome. Not to build it up and the anticipation of getting you on, Stu, but if you try that, you might get through. Gareth, Ben Barber the boil, and I don't want to make this too much about St Helens, but it is enjoyable to see their marquee player missing. It is. James Roby is a potential candidate for Man of Steel. John Bateman, here's one that won't win Man of Steel, but I was asked to do my Super League Dream Team during the week that goes into the 18th man. And one of my second rows, and you can laugh at this if you want, was Willie Isa. He's Mr. Consistent this year.
He hasn't missed a game.
No, he has been good, and I think every team needs a player like that sort of does the dirty stuff and doesn't get the plaudits like some of the other players do. But I think, going back to Man of Steel, I think Roby's an absolute shoo-in for it, because he's just been brilliant. He's as good as he was when he burst onto the scene. How many years has he been? Well over 10 years now. You know, I mean, he sort of lived
Man of Steel 11 years ago.
You know, he sort of lived in the shadow of Kieran Cunningham a little bit, but you know,
most people do.
You know, they'll be putting a statue of him up outside St Helens' ground next, won't they? But no, I think Bateman's a good shout, but I think Roby, just because he's been so consistent, and the fact that Barber has, I don't know, what is it, all the talk of going back to the NRL? I don't know what's upsettled Barber. How can you go from being absolutely brilliant to being average? You know, he doesn't look any more. He looked spectacular. He looked the best player in the competition by an absolute country mile for the first 3 or 4 months of the season, and now he just he just looks average.
Do you know what? I was really scared.
I'm just reading that comment now.
Yeah, I mean, Spencer might be onto something there. Maybe he went back to Australia a while back.
I don't know about you, but I was scared that his future might look like it's been sorted now, like these strong rumours about the Cowboys deal. That made me worried that he might have been relaxed and played better on Friday, but he certainly didn't, did he? So I'm glad about that.
Yeah, and obviously, Hoot going to St Helens looks like it's part of the deal as well. But I mean, again, this will take the conversation off onto a completely different topic. But compare Wigan and St Helens of when they've announced things. Wigan announced things early in the dip in form, got over it. St Helens still haven't announced that the news that everybody knows that Barber's going, and I think the suffering, or he's suffering, is part of that. And you know, maybe Wigan got it right in hindsight. Who knows? Mark, do you want to add anything to your thoughts from Friday night before we move on to the Wakefield game?
Well, I think we haven't talked enough about how good Joe Greenwood was and how good George Williams was in giving him the ball early enough to find space to do things happen. And he really challenged Richardson and the players around Richardson with what he was doing. I think you know, the setup play for Sargenson's first try was great from the team, really reactive to what was on, and that's what you want to be able to see out of people like Williams, especially the way he kind of knew what he was doing for Gildart's try. He drew defenders out of the way, he knew he could get his arm free and that sort of stuff, and he still made plenty of meters in just the hit up carries he had to do. You know, the Liam Farrell carries, the carries where Faz makes 8 or 9 meters per carry, Greenwood was doing those too and doing that too, so he was fantastic.
You'd be lucky to get back in the side, Farrell.
Not at all. Don't.
I like this comment here from Martin Henry. It says it's great to see finding your front ASAP tactic has been binned in place of trampling over. I actually, when I just read that, I was thinking of Gabe Hamlin's run just before the John Bateman try, and I thought Gabe Hamlin, you know, he beat three or four people, handed them off. But then I go back to that game, his debut against Hull KR, and that's where Martin's referring to this alleged criticism that Wayne had about him, about not, you know, he's beating too many people, he needs to get on his front. I actually think that he did that. I think he beat 3 people and thought, actually, if I get a quick play of the ball here, we've got an advantage. So I actually see that a different way, and I think he's kept that in his game, but he's actually taken on board what Sean Wayne said. And
it's about not trying to beat everyone, isn't it?
His work in the lead up to the Bateman try was incredible. It was absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the Wakefield game where the bubble can potentially be burst straight away?
We're winning every game. I've told you this. I don't know why you're not listening.
I mean, it would be the most Wigan thing, though, wouldn't it? After Friday night, to then go out a Thursday night in front of like 7,000 people that'll be there because nobody will be going because it's a Super 8's game and they wouldn't have sold any tickets, to lose against Wakefield, who had Huddersfield last week. It's at home, but you know,
it's at home against Wakefield. If it was away against Wakefield, we'd be on the end of a 60-0 loss, I expect. But it's at home. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
I'm not sure when we last lost to them at home. I'm racking my brains. Was it? It was last year, weren't it? James Worthington scored 2 tries, but we had half a team out. That was
last season.
Yeah,
Wasn't that
I was
long
trying
ago,
to
was
think
it?
when it was. I wasn't saying it was a long time ago. I couldn't remember it, Sean. I realised why I couldn't remember it. I was at someone's wedding. I wasn't at the game. There you go. Last home game I missed.
James Worthington's probably the only person that can remember that game. Gareth, your thoughts for the Wakefield game? Do you expect Wigan, as Mark does, just to continue on this sort of crest of good feeling? I guess is what every single Wigan fan seems to have at the minute.
I can't see any reason why not. I think the difference between this season as last year is that we talked earlier about the fact that we had a similar result at this time last year, and then it all went, downhill pretty quick. Just reading Matt's comment there.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be on the show, does he? Just to get something in.
But I think our form consistently has been much better this year, or it has certainly in the last 6 weeks. I think we've got over the hangover that was there of Wayne announcing he was going to leave, and then the Joel Tompkins incident. And I think since the appointment of Adrian Lamb and then Sean Edwards, I think it's just been positivity around the whole club that's emanated from that decision, and that's gone out onto the players on the pitch. And I think we've looked really good ever since then. And we're building up a nice head of steam, ready for the playoffs. So I can see it nothing but a routine Wigan win. I mean, Wakefield haven't got anything to play for, and I know people say that can be a bit dangerous sometimes, but they really have got nothing to play for. They're not going to get in the playoffs. They're going to finish their 7th or 8th, aren't they?
I just take you
playing for 6th, aren't they? Top half finish for them. That's.
But they're not going to get in the playoffs. So if anything, it's a nothing game for them. And like I say, I think
they hate us though, Gareth. They hate us. Everyone hates us.
Like everyone.
Yeah. They genuinely do though.
Want to take?
Go on.
Just take Gareth's point there about this sort of positivism that's around the club. I think that's right. And I think you're spot on with that about the Adrian Lamb announcement and the Edwards announcement. But I wonder whether Sean Wayne has actually taken that another way and is actually taking this sort of 2016 mentality, the backs against the wall mentality that they had. That, if you remember back to that Warrington game where Ben Flower got sent off, the whole game with a Tautai try and obviously went on to win the grand final. I wonder whether Sean Wayne has seen this, he classed it as a circus, didn't he, last week about the whole Lamb and Edwards thing, and whether he's sort of taken that as a little bit of a, it was going to happen. You can't sort of say, don't appoint a new man for my job until I'm out of it. But whether he's sort of taken a little bit of a hump about that as backs against the wall, everybody's against us kind of thing, whether he's trying to that 2016 similar mentality into it, whereas from the outside it does look like a wave, a crest of optimism. But I just wonder whether that's something that Sean Wayne's very good at doing with his man management, whether that's the angle that he's going down. Just a thought. But to you, Mark, Don Manfredi in the squad.
Just on that point, John, I think all the positive things feed into each other. I think Sean Wayne will have found a way to use his time coming to an end and, maybe some of other distractions and stuff as a driving motivation behind the team, because they seem a relatively close group overall. And then from the stands, there's positivity. From some of the players that will be around next year, there's good feeling about different aspects. I think it's all kind of coming together, and George Williams is back fitting in the team. And people want to say that he's not a marquee player or whatever, but go and watch the last 3 performances he's played. Manfredi, I'm excited to see him back.
Back in the side.
It's going to come at the expense of Sarge, isn't it? Sad news, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's personal circumstances, isn't it? Well, it's one of those things. If Sargison wants to play, is his head right and that kind of thing. And that's we've spoken about this before. That's where I think the club are perhaps better than most clubs in terms of the player welfare, and they'll make sure he's right. But on the positive side, how good would it be to have a fully fit Manfredi going into the final few games, Mark?
I know it's 2 years ago since we had him, but do you remember how good he was? That year, there was the game against Saints on Good Friday that year. He made like 19 or 20 tackle busts. He just was bashing people off all over the place. And then getting tries as well. He was going at like a try a game. He was offloading for fun. So he was doing all these big physical things that you think your forward should be doing, whilst running around people, beating people from a standing start. He was fantastic, wasn't he? So it's great to to potentially have that coming back if he can get back anywhere near that. From the 2 halves he's played in the reserves, it looks like he's got his finishing instinct still. It looks like he's not scared of the physical stuff. He's putting a few big hits. I'm really excited, and yeah, I think there's going to be a natural opening for him there, which is sad in a lot of ways for what's happened with Sargentson, and the fact that Sargentson has been in the best form of his season the last month as well. So if that's how it swings around, that's how it swings around. But it's been great. It's been great before, so I'm excited.
Gareth, your thoughts on that? I guess for him as a player, 2 years out, it's as much as a physical, overcoming the physical aspect as the mental aspect, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just
to not play such a competitive sport.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. I mean, the fella must have incredible mental resolve to spend 2 years out kicking his heels, basically. I know he was injured, so he's been doing some form of rehab work, but and then to come back and then to break down again is devastating for the lad. And it's like signing a new player. It really is like signing a new player with 6 weeks to go towards the end of the season. And say coupled with Sargentson, who, let's be honest, Sargentson was a big high-profile signing in last year, and for one reason or another, it hasn't quite happened. But again, he's clicked into gear in the last month. I just feel it's all falling into place really, really nicely. And yeah, whether Manfredi's ready to play in those high-profile games towards the end of the season remains to be seen. I guess Sean Wayne obviously sees tomorrow night. Thursday night as sort of testing the water a little bit to see how ready he is. But what a player to have that you may be able to call upon in those latter weeks of the season. And just to go back to your point that you made earlier about Sean Wayne saying it's a bit of a circus, there's a couple of things I'd say to that. Well, partly that circus is Sean Wayne's own doing because he decided to leave. And obviously Wigan were always going to appoint a new coach, someone to succeed him. But when you appoint someone like Sean Edwards, because he's come from rugby union, because he's the success he's at, what a massive, slap on the back for our game and for our club as well. He's an legend at our club. And for our game, which is not from pillar to post, partly by its own doing, I have to say, to have someone of the calibre of Sean Edwards back in the game can only be a good thing, really. So I thought the circus thing, I thought it was a little bit of an odd comment, if you ask me. But if he uses that as motivation to propel Wigan to win the grand final, then so be it,
Mark, I guess this is a question that we probably will never have to answer because it will never happen. Because we've been, I think 2 years ago when last year when Davis and Marshall came in, we all thought, imagine how good that will be. Davis, Marshall, Manfredi and Burgess, and you've got to try and fit them into the team. And every single one of them, bar Davis, has pretty much had a long injury. The question there from James is, who would you drop, Marshall or Davis? If we ever get to that stage and you've got to pick.
How excited are you for 3 months of social media? Which one can you turn into a centre conversations over the winter? But in reality,
we've got too many centres now.
Marshall's picked up an injury, sadly, which is a problem. I think people might know how much I love Tom Davies. Is the amount of work he puts in to things for the team. The tiny amount of errors he made. I think there wasn't a winger in Super League last season who made fewer errors per carry or per game than Tom Davies. He really didn't let us down. Yes, David's comment there. Joe Brown, he scored a hat trick for Swinton on Sunday. Did Joe Brown? He's another fantastic. He just looks like another version of Burgess, doesn't he? I don't think we have to worry about which one we're going to drop because form and injury will dictate those things. I think we should be excited about how many options we've got instead of thinking about who we're going to drop. And I wouldn't think it would be dropping. I think it would be someone gets a chance through injury and then deserves that chance and takes it because they've all taken their chances ever since. I mean, did Burgess score 2 tries on his debut and then Manfredi scored a try on his debut 5 years ago? So they've all come in and never let us down. Our winger conveyor belt is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I guess it is it's hypothetical, and if we ever get into that situation, what a situation it'll be for Adrian Lamb or Sean Edwards or whichever manager may be in charge by the time all four of them are fit, or Burgess might have decided he wanted to try NRL again by that time. Before we finish up, Gareth, I know you're going to say a few words on the book that the three of us have contributed to. But Mark, before we go over to Gareth, do you want to just give us a little bit of an insight as to what's on SLP this week, which you can download?
Well, we had a real big amount of listener match reviews in this week, particularly around the Hull FC debacle and around the Wigan, great Wigan performance as well. We had a lot of people complimenting Wigan, which was a real weird experience for me to have sat through.
Yeah,
so that's
want people to stop now.
We had
it was like
yeah. It was a weird show this week. We segued off into every single big decision topic that came up. So loads of little just tidbits in there. Tim was co-hosting. He hadn't been on for about a month, so I think he had a lot to get off his chest.
Stuart gives up. Stuart, I'll talk you through how to get on for next time. Don't worry, we'll get you on. I know he wants to get on before he gets married. I think he sees this as a form of stag do. It must look like fun from the outside. Gareth, the three, as I mentioned, the three of us have contributed to Tom McHugh's book. It's in our blood. I don't think any of us want to give away what our chapters are about. I know I've alluded to Mark before about my chapter, but do you want to talk a little bit about the book? It's out on the 3rd of November, I think, available to pre-order. I've put a link in the comments for people if anybody is interested in having a look at it.
Yeah, so first of all, I think I tweeted about it yesterday that it's an honour and a privilege to be asked to contribute to the book. Tom emailed me about a month ago, and Tom, if you watch, I'm really sorry that I nearly missed the deadline, but just one of them things. I think the deadline was last Friday, and I started writing my bit on Wednesday evening about 11 o'clock at night. So first of all, it's a real honour and privilege to be asked to contribute to the book. It's called It's in Our Blood. It's contributions from fans like us, which, believe it or believe it not, although we do this kind of thing, we are just normal fans that love rugby league and love Wigan. There's players in there as well. There's players in there as well, isn't there? And I'm not quite sure who else, but yeah, we've all sort of contributed to the book to say why we love our club and why we love our sport, really. And looking forward to seeing the final thing. Yeah, I'm not going to give too much away about mine, but obviously, being an exiled supporter, I don't get to see. It's quite unusual for someone who lives. Obviously, for those of you watching that don't know, I live in Cornwall now, but I used to live in Dorset, so it's quite a unique story to how I came to watch rugby league. And I'll just give you a little snippet about what mine involves. So mine mentions Halifax's Old From Hall ground, Jason Robinson in the back of an ambulance, Sean Edwards and an umbrella, and that's it. That's all I'm going to tell you. Mine mentions. But 3rd of November, you'll be able to read it for yourself.
Mark, do you want to give us a teaser of what yours is about, if you can?
Well, it's kind of my highlights over my time of supporting the club, and what took me from being basically a football supporter who knew about rugby league to being a huge rugby league supporter who themed a lot of aspects of his wedding around Wigan Rugby League Club. So it's kind of that journey I went on, and the real touchstone moments of that journey that made me just infatuated with the sport of rugby league and with Wigan Warriors.
I mean, I think the three of us obviously can't compete with Matt because he has got a cravat in it, which you wouldn't expect anything less from Mr. Macaulay. A teaser of mine. Mine is my consistent failed attempts of school trips to try and get signed for Wigan. That's mine. Viewing school trips as a trial when they were really school trips to Central Park. That's what mine's about. So it's available to pre-order. Like I said, the link's in the comment if anybody wants to do it. We don't get any money from it, but it's just to support Tom. I think it'll be a fantastic book. And as you can see, there's 3 completely different angles on what we've written just there, and a 4th if you include Matt. Gareth, thank you very much for taking the time out of your evening to join us.
No worries.
Stu, if you're still watching, I promise we will get you on. And Mark, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening as well. And we'll be back. Who do we play next week? Warrington. Is that right?
Yeah, Warrington next Friday.
Yeah, Warrington, yeah.
For the fifth game this season, is that right?
I don't know. Are we at like it's a decider in it potentially?
Well,
in the series, if we look at it that way.
Yeah,
kind of like baseball where you play the same team in a series in the season.
There might be a 6th game, of course. But anyway, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll be back next week previewing the Warrington game and probably picking ourselves up after a Wakefield defeat after the high of the Saints game. But who knows? Thanks everybody for watching. Cheers.